Okay, so let's open it up to the community members. Again, please come to the microphone, announce yourself, and then either make comments. You'll be given up to 3 minutes to do that, uninterrupted by us. And if you do have a question, please identify who you prefer to answer the question. Okay.
My name is Carol Harvey, and I'm a journalist. I'm going to throw this open to Keith, Dave, anybody who can answer any of these questions. The people in 1126 Reeves Court are being moved out. That's happening shortly. What does the Navy hope to find under 1126 Reeves Court? And I want to point out, with respect to Mukesh Mehta's presentation and the additions that were made by Kimberly Noble and by Nina Basie, ethene is not non-toxic and not non-hazardous. It can explode, and people can experience negative health effects from ethene. This is made to sound like it's not dangerous for people in his report. And people have already walked through that area. There have been people living on the island for a long time, and they've already walked through that. What about those people? So you want me to sit down while you answer the questions?
Okay. It'll probably be more comfortable for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Keith.
Sure. 1126, building 1126, which is around Reeves Court. What does the Navy hope to find there? Which I think we'll interpret as, what does the data already show that's there?
Well, what chemicals and radiation contaminants?
Wow.
Correct. So
yeah.
in Site 12 in general, the contaminants of concern, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, VOCs, and of course metals. And in that particular area, the pre-sampling that Bryce Bartelma did a couple years ago indicated that the soil contamination may extend underneath the foundation. So by removing the building, we'll get access to it versus leaving it in place.
Can I add something to that as part of the question?
Well, let's answer all the questions first, and then you can come up for another round.
All right.
Okay. So that I believe answers the question. What did the Navy find there? We found circling contaminants that you had listed there.
Because of the sampling.
And we're going to be doing digging there, right? As a next phase, and across the site, we're going to be doing digging.
Correct.
In 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do some of the digging, we do have to get underneath the building, and that's why the housing providers are going to actually move the residents out of 1126.
No, but did you understand the question? It's not what did you find there, but what do you hope to find there? What are you looking for?
Well, good question. We are data driven, so we look at the data as Dave indicated, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking to see if the data that is around in the proximity of the building, and sometimes right up to the foundation of the building, if that contaminant, first of all, we're going to dig to remove that contaminant, and then we're going to see if that contamination extends beneath the foundation. Those are the two things we do.
Sometimes we were able to take those angled drillings and get underneath, and sometimes not. In this case, I think we did get a few, and it indicated it probably goes underneath the foundation, because it's on either side of the building, as I recall.
So you did drill under 1126?
In that area we may have, off the top of my head, I don't recall, but it definitely looks like it's on both sides.
Yeah, it looks like it's on both sides, so we didn't really need to, we knew that we most likely have to take down the foundation, take down the building, get underneath the foundation, and then gather data there to see if the contamination extends there. And you have a situation, it's a pretty familiar situation, when you have data on a leading edge and you look at what you have data-wise and then you can make a determination on the likelihood. In this case, the Navy and the regulators actually got together on this and decided a couple of years ago, yep, building 1126, we need to look under it, meaning doing digging right up to and probably a little bit underneath the foundation. And that's what drove our decision.
Okay.
So site 24 is our main groundwater site. If you recall from other presentations, it's where building 99 and 96 are, and amongst other buildings. And it's where the dry cleaning plant that basically serviced the entire island was. Very common when you have a dry cleaning plant because of the associated piping and the dry cleaning fluids in the tanks and just the sheer volume of running a dry cleaning plant anywhere leads to leaks over time, and this dry cleaning plant was no exception. Over the decades, there were spills of essentially components of dry cleaning fluid. So they leaked into the soil, and then they eventually reached the groundwater, which is not hard to do at Treasure Island. As you know, the groundwater is rather close to the surface. And then they were found in the groundwater as well as the soil. So what we've been doing over time is to remove the soil and then to treat the groundwater. On Mukesh Mehta's presentation and Kimberly's presentation, that had to do, I believe you're talking about Site 24. And
yes.
You're talking about the breakdown of products that essentially when you take the chlorine atoms and dechlorinate the atoms of the chlorinated compounds. We've learned in other presentations from Mukesh Mehta, for instance, last month, that process goes on and we track that through a series of different chemicals.
Yes.
And they all have names.
Yeah.
And some of the byproducts at the very end are ethene and ethane. And those are the byproducts that are left over. Those do not present a health risk, to my knowledge. And it's common in these sites that is actually at the end of the chain of hydrocarbons.
That's what he said.
Ethene and ethane are pretty basic
But that's
hydrocarbons.
wrong.
So
That's incorrect.
you indicated who has walked through Site 24. I'm not familiar with anyone who's walked through Site 24. It's mostly fenced off.
It's a large site, as you can see in the map. There's various buildings, some open space and roads, so.
Yeah. But so again, the contaminants we're talking about are currently in the groundwater, right? And that was the groundwater that was treated, and it was treated in two different ways. It was zero-valent iron, and I believe that's what you're referring to, because zero-valent iron takes the dry cleaning fluid, essentially, the components of it, and rips off chlorine atoms, breaking down those compounds into smaller compounds, and eventually, at the end of that chain, it's recognized that those compounds are ethane and ethene.
Correct.
After vinyl chloride is broken down. And that's essentially the end goal of that, is to take it down to those two compounds. When you do, you can close out a site. I'm not sure about your distinction between non-toxic and non-hazardous, but I can just tell you in environmental science that is the goal of breaking down the compounds, and that essentially when you do a risk assessment based on those compounds, that's the basis across the country for closing out groundwater sites that had chlorinated compounds in the beginning. But again, that's in the groundwater. That's not there's nothing on the surface of the site that anybody's walking through. And then I believe, and then your last one, of course, was a request from Ms. Basie, who has that request. I believe that covers it.
Yes.
Okay.
You indicated that I could do a follow-up?
Pardon?
Yeah, you indicated that I could do a follow-up.
Sure, come up to the, you
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. If you want to take somebody else first, that's okay.
Pardon?
If you want to take somebody else first, that's okay.
I don't indicate, go right ahead, Carol.
Okay, all right. The most important of my two questions,
Okay.
first of all, thousands of people have walked through that Site 24. Thousands of people. People live on the island, they've lived on the island when that was a dry cleaning plant.
Sure.
And, I mean, let's face it, this island's like a little thin sponge, and the groundwater is pretty close to the surface, and it does get wet, and that stuff comes up through it, isn't it? And not just walking on dry dirt. So it's definitely possible that people could come in contact with the PCEs and TCEs on their shoes or breathe it. So I have a question about that.
What would the question be on that?
Well, in pointing that out, you indicated that nobody would touch it because it's dry. I think you were suggesting that it's underneath the ground, that it's not accessible to people. And that's simply not true. I walked through there when there were big puddles in there, and I came away with wet shoes.
Right.
And that's been in the soil for decades, hasn't it? So that we can't leave out all the people that have come in contact with that. Now, I will bring about the ethene, that's the final point in the chain. Mukesh showed that clearly in the charts. It was the final point in the chain. He said ethane and ethane. And I can show you, and I will bring some material safety data sheets that show that ethene is not non-toxic. It can build up, it can blow up, it is toxic.
Just wanted to make a couple points here. I hope this addresses some of your comments. Yeah, there's a distinction on Site 24 when it rains or on Site 24 or on any place on the island. You're right, on the surface you do get your shoes wet after it rains or when there's puddles or during the winter when there's just runoff water. You get your sneakers wet, that's true. But that's surface water, and surface water is distinguished from the groundwater. And I think if I understood you correctly, you were indicating that you thought that there was this interface between the surface water and the groundwater. Even though, I mean, you're looking at typically 4 feet, 5 feet, depends on where you are on the island, as to where the water table is, and depending upon how close to the bay, it's also tidally influenced. In other words, it goes up and down a little bit with the tide.
Right.
But the surface water and groundwater don't typically interface. When you have that kind of situation, it's known as an artesian situation, and we don't have artesian water at Treasure Island. And artesian water is when you have groundwater that actually daylights, comes up. You have that in a lot of areas. Some places in Colorado, for instance, but not here on Treasure Island. So there's quite a distinguishing factor between that. Now the surface water does infiltrate from the surface if there's enough of a quantity and it can penetrate. The surface water does migrate and infiltrate down into the soil column and eventually can reach, and does often reach, the groundwater and join the groundwater. And so the groundwater is a mix of bay water here on the island, bay water and surface water. In different ratios depending upon where you are on the island. Although there is a significant component as you get closer to the edge of the island of bay water intrusion rather than surface water. But there is, since 1936, 1937, the creation of much of Treasure Island, surface water has accumulated, there has been infiltration, and then it radially has distributed. It's created a groundwater body that does have surface water in it that then has radiated out towards the bay, and the surface water, the groundwater rather, very slowly on Treasure Island radiates out and actually migrates to the bay, to the edges. Okay. All right. So, any other questions? Any other comments? Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the meeting. I thought we had some good substantive presentations. Without further ado, meeting number 189 is adjourned.